Hi guys, I hope this vid finds you well. As we move into what is now week 3 of the gym closure, I thought it'd be appropriate to sort of turn our attention away from the physical aspect of the exercise, which we focused pretty much on for the last couple of weeks, and now turn our attention to another part of the philosophy that underpins active health. And that's rather than the do side of it, as in the exercise, the think side of things. Now, I think most mental health care professionals will probably agree with the statement that our ability to cope with stress is really dictated to a large extent by our ability to cope with internal and external pressures. Now, by internal and external pressures, I mean external pressures are pretty prevalent at the moment. Things like the lockdown we have very little control over, and the fact that as a result of that, people are losing their jobs or find themselves being made redundant. Again, these are external factors that we as individuals can't really control too much. Internal factors are those kind of things that enable us to sort of either deal with them pretty well or not deal with them at all. So it's things like our interpretation and perception, and also our feelings, and to a large extent our behaviour as well. So what I wanted to do today was to try and throw a couple of ideas out there that might enable us to regain a degree of control over this, because again, I think most mainstream mental health practitioners would agree that one of the underlying factors that lends itself quite significantly to sort of stress is our ability to control situations, or sadly in most cases it's that loss of control that really does tip people over the edge sometimes. So what I wanted to focus on was looking at how we could perhaps interpret the current circumstances in a slightly more positive way, and in so doing give us back a little bit of control. So I think in doing that, the first thing really is to with any of these kind of situations is to try and identify a purpose. In other words, okay, yeah, the government told us we're in lockdown, we've got to curtail activities, etc., but that's kind of defaulting the responsibility to someone else or something else, something is external to us. However, if we just sort of try and take ownership of it and identify a purpose in why we're in lockdown, that can go an awful long way to helping us interpret and cope with the situation a little bit easier. So if we were to look at our purpose in being in lockdown at the moment to be, in effect, rather than just being told, we're actually keeping family and friends, colleagues safe. So there's a reason for it, if you like. It also helps to ease the burden on the NHS. Of course, whenever we flick the telly on, and I certainly wouldn't suggest that you live in front of the TV at the moment, but we're very much made aware of how us staying at home helps to ease the burden on the NHS. So again, another good reason. And I suppose the number one sort of purpose in doing this is that by us doing something as simple as staying at home, it helps to keep not only other individuals safe, but it's also saving lives, because it's reducing the rate of infection, which ultimately takes the pressure off the NHS a little bit, which means the resources can be put into helping those people that really need it. Now, okay, so your focus is on identifying the purpose. The other end of this is to sort of focus on the end point. So in any given situation, actually having an endpoint to work towards does make it an awful lot easier. So in this instance, the kind of things that we used to take pretty much for granted, even sort of 3-4 weeks ago, can actually serve as a real focal point. So in other words, focusing on the fact that when this comes to an end, and it will do without a shadow of a doubt, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll be in the next 2 to 3 weeks. But when it comes to an end, actually thinking now about what we're going to do. So those things that we used to take for granted, like meeting friends and family, that kind of stuff, start to think about it a little bit more. Look forward to it. silly little things like going out for a coffee or going out for a meal, going out to the movies, all of those kind of things that we used to do without even giving it a second thought. Actually, now by focusing your attention on those kind of things, they can actually become something to look forward to, which makes, again, this kind of situation that we find ourselves in a little bit more tolerable because we've got a specific endpoint in mind and we have something to look forward to. I mean, if you really want to go down the route of sort of visualization, don't get me wrong, some people find that very easy to do, some people find it very difficult, but you can turn this whole thing into a sort of a sensory rich experience by using sort of your thought processes and your feelings and your sense of smell and taste and all the rest of it to make this kind of thing something that is very real at the moment, which means that getting to that end point becomes significantly easier. So when we've got this kind of sense of purpose and we've got this end point, then the bit in the middle is a bit that most of us tend to struggle with. So this is where a couple of coping strategies can come in really, really quite helpful.